everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Future of Podcast. It's Vasi here, and I'm going to be solo hosting today as Azam is away, but we have an amazing guest for you. As you know, we always try to get really interesting guests with really topical issues. And today we have Murray Simzer. I'm off today.
Simzer.
Yeah. And today we have Murray Simzer. He's the CEO of Citizen, and he has quite an impressive resume. He spent time in Silicon Valley. He's a tech entrepreneur, a founder. He has a degree from the University of Ottawa in economics. And why we wanted him on the podcast today is because there's a little thing or a little issue in the world called AI. And it seemed to sort of taken over a lot of our discussions, a lot of our thoughts in the context, not only of how we view the future creatively, how we view the future in terms of work, and especially technology. And we thought we'd want to speak to Murray today and have a really interesting conversation, not only about AI and maybe, you know, a little bit of context as to what AI is, because I think a lot of people maybe even including myself, kind of are like, what is artificial intelligence exactly? And then really touch upon the intersection of AI and democracy. As we know, in 2024 alone, about half of the world is going to be participating in some sort of democratic election. I know Canada, at least, it won't be this year. It could be potentially, but definitely next year. But a lot of the largest democracies in the world will be casting a ballot. And Murray here is here today to not only talk about AI, but talk about AI in the context of democracy and a lot of the work he and his company that he's founded is doing towards that. So welcome, Murray. Really excited to start. And maybe to kick off the question, and you know, it's maybe really a very basic one, but it's really around when someone says to you, hey, can you explain to me what is AI? Like, how would you explain that?
Yeah, I would tell them that AI doesn't exist.
Okay.
Sort of not to stress about it as much as everybody sort of makes it out to be. First off, thanks for having me on the show. I'm delighted to be here. We've been planning to talk for a couple of months now, and
yes,
great. But back to AI. AI is the latest in a long line of terms that we use to describe super complex computing. Okay. If you think about when I was a kid, the first video games that came out looked very rudimentary. They were one color on a black screen. They were blocks of things, and you could usually play sort of ping pong or something with it. And that was the level of complexity in the 1970s. Okay. In the 1980s, we got colored video games that could be played on a sort of TV screen. In the 90s, we got Nintendos and very advanced gaming platforms that changed from the Atari days to something starting to approximate three-dimensional video gaming. And then in the 2000s, we got hyper-realistic video games. And you had players that were talking to you that seemed like real people, okay? And that what brought us to 2010. And then from 2010 forward, we had an even greater leap in complexity. And now if you play the latest PC games, they're utterly indistinguishable from reality, okay? Yeah. But the amount of code that's involved in creating that is so gigantic that you can't really fathom how much information is required to make a hyper-realistic video game. And so people start talking about, wow, this is like reality, and this sounds like reality, and that player sounds like a real player. Use the video game analogy to understand AI, okay? AI is the same thing. In the 60s, we had little robots that spoke like this and couldn't barely answer your question, but they were small constructions of code that were designed to approximate the behavior of a human. Not very well. By the 80s, Boston Dynamics robots famously were every year they had new, you can see this reel going around where they show you the progression of the robotics, and the amount of code in every generation, every year that went by, sort of doubles and doubles and doubles using sort of Moore's law. The density of computing becomes so great that we have to come up with terms to describe it, okay? And so now we have robots from Boston Dynamics and Tesla and a variety of others that, like, if you put skin on them, you couldn't tell them from me.
Yeah. And they do
Right?
like, they do
like,
everyday,
that's where we're at.
right. And
Now,
they do everyday jobs and things and so forth now.
And so what do humans do with all great technology that reminds them of a human? They anthropomorphize it. Okay. So
Right.
what we've done with AI is we've applied all of our insecurities and all of our natural human misunderstandings, okay, to a technology. Because it sounds like us, we've naturally said that it's got to be conscious, it's got to be sentient, it's got to want to have a religion, it's got to, none of that's true, okay? There's no difference between that Pong game and the AI you're playing with today from a computing standpoint. None.
Mhm.
The only difference is the complexity of the thing that's being output in front of you, okay? And so we as humans need a way to describe that, because you're a philosophy major, you have a master's degree, I believe in it. The concept of super advanced technology is generally indistinguishable from magic. And magic always scares people. Historically, anybody who had a skill was burned at the stake, okay? So famously, witches, women, anybody who was trying to emancipate themselves from the clutches of nonsense, magician, oh my God, they're crazy. They're trying to wreck us. AI is the same. Okay. AI is not different than this computer. Okay. It's not different than a laptop. It's not different than any piece of technology. It uses the same foundational elements, the processor, the GPU, the NPU. These are all the same things. They're all transistor-based systems that are allowing for rapid computing, okay? And NPUs and GPUs have tricks to make them faster and better, and they jump through hoops, and they can. But the fact of the matter is, AI isn't. Now, that's the really philosophical, complex way to think about it. But now let me tell you what AI is from the standpoint of everyday life, okay? Forget the crazy philosophy of AI and, oh, is it alive? And it's not alive. It'll never be alive. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have quantum. It's not going to happen. Okay. But AI has its uses. And AI's most important application is to identify signals in noise. Okay. And if you think about what signals in noise means, it means that when you get into hyper complex data sets, okay, and by that, I mean something as complex as an AI's code, okay? Something really large. Humans are unable to identify patterns of behavior that would otherwise be perfectly obvious to a processor that's running a routine. That routine that's running is the AI. And it's code just like Microsoft Word, and it's code just like the processor on your phone or in your headset or whatever other piece of computing equipment you have, your microwave. It's doing exactly the same thing. And it can identify signals that are so remote and difficult to identify that this is the thing that's going to be used to cure cancers and disease, and it's going to be used in defense to protect us, and it's going to be used in chemistry to invent new drugs, and it's going to be used in democracy to make sure that we're heard in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine with, say, a PS4 video game platform or an Xbox One. The future is identifying signals at levels that we couldn't possibly imagine.
We couldn't identify before.
That's the purpose of AI.
Perfect.
And those signals represent future technologies that are going to make our lives wonderful and beautiful. Don't be afraid of AI. AI is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Don't listen to the losers. Jobs won't go away. You're never going to have a bad thing come about because of the greatest technology that's ever been invented in the history of the planet.
Yeah, yeah. So then, based on this explanation, it's really an application of highly intelligent technology to things in our lives right now, that what we're saying is, how do we better them moving forward? How do we make them easier? How do we make them more efficient?
That's
So, it could be work, it could be, to your point, health. How do we
yeah.
identify the things that are issues, problems with technology that is far more sophisticated than what, I guess, the human mind can manage and do. Would that, like, is that pretty
And I'll
accurate,
say
or?
this: it's not that the human mind can't manage or do it,
Okay.
but it's that the human mind is designed primarily to not be a computer. That's a mistake people make. When we were kids,
Yeah.
we had to remember multiplication tables, and we had to remember how to do grammar and spelling. We don't need that now, okay? Because we've moved on. Okay, the reason we've moved on is because now we have devices that can remember multiplication tables to an unlimited number of line items. Why do we need to remember 12 by 12 graph of that? The fact of the
Mhm.
matter is, humans have to be calculators because we were the smartest things that were out there for calculating. Okay.
That's right.
Until
Yeah.
Babbage came along and created the first mechanical computer. And then Turing came along and created the first electronic computer and the entire framework that we describe as computer today. Okay. The concept of runtime, the concept of reprogrammability, the concept of a language, a concept of, reuse. All that stuff hasn't changed. Turing's universal machine, if you go back to the original paper in the mid-30s, okay, that saved all of the West, okay, all of great civilization saved by this genius computer guy. And nothing's changed. The reason nothing's changed is because his discoveries were so profound. They're on the level of Einstein. Okay, this guy literally invented computers.
Yes.
And we are living with that legacy today, and nothing's changed except the fact that those computers back then, his computers broke the Enigma code famously. Okay. And the Enigma code was the code machine that the World War II Nazis used for all of their communication between their troops. And because we knew that, because we were able to identify those signals in the noise, remember, there's millions of radio signals going. We capture all of them, we write them down, and then we have to look through all those papers. And we have to say, which is the right one? There's 150 million possible combinations. What's the right one? That was the signal that Turing was able to regularly identify on a daily basis by running through the data that he captured from his what were at the time called Y stations, where there were ladies typing stuff down, listening to shit. And so at the end of the day, he did that. He identified signals to noise. What's the difference between that and, for instance, identifying a gene signal inside of a person's body data? You take millions of people's DNA, and then you can identify signals in that data. And people are worried that AI is going to hurt us. Okay, like AI isn't going to hurt us. This isn't Marvel Comics. Okay, where the AI is going to wake up one day and he's going to be Vision. Okay, so it's in the end, we've got to stop being afraid of technology all the time. Every new technology that comes along freaks everybody out. Okay, in the 70s, microwaves, the greatest. That thing over there, you can see one in my apartment here. Okay. That microwave, when it came out in the 60s and 70s, had people panicking. Radiation is going to destroy food and we're going to all be dead. And it heats things up, okay? It's chemically, it's the oxidation is oxidation, okay? Heating up water molecules is no different if you put it on a surface than you put. So it didn't make any sense. And we had 25 years of people worried about microwaves destroying us, okay? When it was an equalizing technology. Because it was cheap and it was available and it was good for people's health, because now they could cook it like this fear wrecks everything good.
Right. So maybe go back to what I like is the way you've framed the idea of AI, artificial intelligence. It's that ultimately it identifies signals in noise.
Yeah.
And that's those signals are what we identify to make those changes. And then the other, I guess, point that you made was, I think a really perfect movie that I would say from a pop culture perspective that contextualizes the notion of artificial intelligence is like Terminator 2, right? When they think that, oh, all of a sudden these robots are taking over, and it may be a cause for concern for humanity. You also made the comment that, this is not a Marvel movie. We're not going to end up with a Vision. So like, how would you tell people, like, how do you allay those concerns? Like, what are those concerns around, could AI as a technology, get us to those points where these signals that we've identified could threaten what we're doing?
Yeah.
And, also, maybe are there ethical things that we also need to be mindful of in terms of how AI is being used moving forward as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So let me ask our friend what they think about this point. Gemini, can you tell us exactly what AI is capable of doing and why it's good for humanity?
To start, AI can learn from huge amounts of data to find patterns that humans might miss. This is useful for things like medical diagnoses or finding new materials for clean energy. Another strength of AI is its ability to automate repetitive tasks, which can free up people's time for more complex and creative work. For example, AI can help with driving cars, sorting packages in warehouses, or even writing simple news articles. AI is also really good at understanding.
You know that I can interrupt Gemini. Hey, Gemini, stop. Tell me something. Tell me something else. Is AI a threat to humans?
Okay, here's the deal with AI and the threat narrative. It's true, there are concerns about things like job displacement and the potential for misuse. But it's important to remember that AI itself isn't inherently dangerous. It's really about how we choose to develop and use it. AI has the potential to be incredibly beneficial, but we need to focus on building it in a safe and responsible way.
Thank you, Gemini.
Okay.
So I'm talking to Gemini in what's called live conversation, okay?
Mhm.
I don't have to ask it specific commands. I can just chat. Gemini, can you tell us how long AI's been around?
The idea of creating intelligent
Thank you,
machines has been
Gemini.
around for centuries.
Yeah.
Gemini's just the Google model, okay? Copilot with Microsoft OpenAI has ChatGPT voice, or I think it's called Live. Grok from X, which is the best one of all because it's uncensored. You can actually do all the stuff you want with it. I know everybody hates Elon Musk, but let me tell you something. Elon Musk is the single greatest creator of technology, period, ever. He's our Edison, he's our Tesla, and anybody who hates Elon Musk isn't paying attention, okay? I don't give a shit what his opinions are, and nor should anybody. The guy's going to save humanity, okay? And I literally mean that because we're going to have a second planet as a function of him. This will guarantee the long-term existence of humans. Now, if that's not useful and you think he should be deplatformed as a person because somehow he's got weird opinions, then let me tell you about every scientist and cuckoo in the history of the world that's invented anything. They've all been attacked like this. Now, you really have to stop and ask yourself the question, why is it that great people get attacked like this? The answer is the same reason that AI gets attacked, and that is that when you don't understand something, it's indistinguishable from magic. And when it's magic, you need to burn them at the stake like the Salem witches, okay? This old way of being is as tribal a behavior as can possibly exist in humans, and we should not turn AI into the devil. What you just heard represents the single greatest technology that's ever been. And I just had a conversation in front of you with an AI without having to give it commands. It was just part of our conversation, and I interjected and it participated.
Yeah.
You know
So
how much processing power is required to get that done?
Oh, I'm aware. So the only thing I would say though, then if AI is not threatening, it's one of these technologies that's been around for centuries, according to Gemini. And, it's something over time that will, like everything else, help to enhance our life. The only question I would have then is what would be some of the safeguards we would need that, it's also managed a certain way as well.
Yeah, it's look. You heard what Gemini said when I asked the question. You can use a knife to cook, and you can use a knife for war. Okay, you can use atomic power to save the climate, or you can use it to blow each other up. Okay, you can use swords, okay, to defend, and you can use swords to harm. All technology has that power. Okay, 100%. Fire, the original technology, the wheel, the original technology. All technologies will be used by good and bad actors. I regret to tell you that every generation must eventually face the evil that is the use of their advanced technologies against them. This is not unique to this world of AI. In the Cold War, famously, it was all about atomic energy and the mutually assured destruction. Humans have not yet contemplated the consequences of AI, okay, like we have with atomic energy.
Right.
Atomic energy and weapons, we solved that problem. It was really simple. If we fight with them, we're all dead, okay? It's very simple. Nobody survives a nuclear war, which means nobody chooses a nuclear war, even when they're under threat, okay? That took us 50, 60 years to figure out, okay? And by 1990, we had figured that out at the end of the Cold War. We're like, we got to stop, okay? Now, the next wars, the ones that are being fought now, are being fought with AI, okay? And what I mean by that is if you think that Ukraine is shooting off little RC airplanes and trying to blow stuff up, you're dreaming. They're using AI to get this stuff done. They're using cheap equipment that AI can then deploy accurately, hyper accurately. That's an example of an application of AI. Famously, there's a company called Palantir that does kill chain analysis and who to get. And, it sounds awful, right? But we live in this country under the protection of that aggressive threat of violence. Now, I know that young people don't like that, okay? But I want to speak to the young people, and I want to say this. The reason we live this life is because we are prepared to deliver violence against our enemies, okay? There's a reason we're the most powerful states that have ever existed in the history of the world. But it is also true that we are also the most responsible states that have ever existed in the history of the world. We are the ones that define the good use of technology. Our enemies are the ones that define the bad, okay? It's not us trying to wreck people with AI, all right? And I take great pride in the fact that I come from a Western civilization that, starting with the Judeo background, the Greek the Hellenic flourishing, all of the things that we have in the West are worth protecting. And the reason, and this is a great segue, the reason I created this company is because people are currently trying to destroy the beautiful Western civilizations that we have from without, meaning our enemies abroad, and from within, okay? It is not an accident that we are facing this turmoil and tumult in our societies today. In fact, it's being programmed through social media algorithms from our enemies abroad. Iran, famously, is programming social media and interfering physically in a country to change people's political opinions. Okay, this is designed to make that stop, all right?
Yeah.
And to put us back in control of the democratic narrative so that we don't all feel like our societies are coming apart at the seams and we're not getting what we need.
So maybe we pivot from that, and then having a better understanding of AI. How do you see that intersection of AI and democracy? Like, what role does AI have to play in the notion of democracy? Also knowing, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, a very large percentage of the world's population will be participating in some form of democratic voting this year.
Absolutely. I trust you've experienced the vagaries of what truth is today. Truth, more than ever, it's always been to a certain degree, but more than ever, truth is a point of view. Okay, and that's not a problem. That's what we want in a sort of what I'll call a Hellenic society, okay? If you want to think about it like that, you're Greek. And
Yes.
so the concept of the Hellenic society, okay, the thing that made it so interesting is the same thing that makes our modern times interesting. Look, we don't always agree, but we have a mechanism to figure out what we're going to agree on, even if I don't like the outcome. Okay? That's the social contract that we all agree to. And in Canada in particular, we have the concept of peace, order, and good government as the foundational pieces of what a good democracy is. So long as you can guarantee those three things, most of the people in our society will want to actively participate in that society. And until the internet came along, that was true. Because the greatest flourishing in the West since the Hellenic explosion of wisdom and philosophy and mathematics and all of the thinking arts, if you want to think about it like that, never happened again until we had the emancipation movements of the 17th and 18th centuries. Okay? And those emancipation movements, starting, say, with the Protestant Protestant revolutions that happened, broadly speaking, in the North. And if we take our sort of Anglo past, if we think about Canada being part of that empire, Oliver Cromwell in the Glorious Revolution said, enough of this absolute monarchy crap. Humans are humans, and we're going to have a thing, okay? It's going to be called democracy, and it's inspired by the Greeks. We're going to have democracy, and that was called the Glorious Revolution, the English Civil War, okay? That is what created parliament and democracy. Okay, in the modern sense, not in the ancient sense, but that was the first time parliament became supreme, not a king or a queen or something like this. When that happened, it took another 100 years for the French and the Yanks to figure out that, hey, this is a good idea. Okay, and we're gonna have our own little situation, have a little fit. We're gonna have a little revolutioning. We're gonna have a little fight. We're going to create a new version of that democracy. So instead of a constitutional monarchy, which is what the Glorious Revolution produced, they produced republics. Okay, and this was inspired once more by the Hellenic Roman, Greco-Roman sort of pantheon of history, and rediscovering that pantheon and re-engaging that pantheon happened increasingly. It happened more often than you could have imagined. And the whole world was adopting democracy right into the 90s, okay, with the culmination being the end of the Cold War. Wow, it was the magnificent time. And then the internet came along and fucked all that up, okay? And at the end of the day, when they fucked it all up, it's not because they destroyed democracies. It's because whenever a new technology comes along, you destabilize existing authority pools. And this is coming to the answer to your question about democracy in the modern day. The cause of democracy in the first place was technology. The printing press was the cause of the creation of everything I just talked about in the last, say, 300 years. Okay, the printing press is what allowed the kings to tell the Pope to piss off. Okay, we're going to have our own countries now. That's where nations came from. Okay, we take for granted, oh, I live in a country. Well, that didn't exist 200 years ago. Okay, countries are a new thing, and they were created through this democratic flourishing that we saw recently. The internet is the modern printing press, and social media is just really accurate printing presses. Okay, like way more targeted printing presses than the original. And every time a new technology comes along in the technical system, it's delivered through these devices to our brains. And that changes who's in charge. Okay. Now, this is really important and germane to your question. Okay. Because the reason politics and everything seems so destabilized now versus, say, the late 80s, arguably we were under a bigger threat then, but everything seemed organized and we were happy we were going to win, Now, anybody can use the technology to say anything. And I'm not poo-pooing that. I think that's fabulous. But that also means you're going to get bad actors in the system. Whereas before it was hard to get bad actors in the political system because you could just ignore a village idiot. okay, back in the day.
Mhm.
That was easy. You ignore the village idiot. He's a village idiot. But today, the village idiots have created village idiot cities online, okay? And they're an actual group of people with influence and power, however dumb they are, okay? So this is the nexus for this company, Citizen, okay? How does AI and democracy in the state that I just described go together? Why did I bother
Yeah.
creating this? And the answer is because if you don't control the narrative online with one set of facts identified by signals in AI, then you don't have anything to talk about. Now, we can disagree on how the facts play out, but there are certain things that are facts. And Citizen is designed to make this device capable of engaging every individual in every democracy on earth in a truth-seeking mission
Mhm.
that will take away the power of goofy social media and weirdo people trying to wreck our countries and foreign spies sitting on our platforms and making bullshit videos to set us at each other's throats. I take the example of the Palestinian-Israeli war, okay? Extremely hot topic today, okay? To the point where people are just losing their minds, even here locally. I live at Bloor and Yonge in Toronto, okay? Which is where all the protests take place because you've got the embassies and the consulates and everything are here. And the fact of the matter is that you listen to these people and you watch these people, and this is not normal, okay? These protests are funded, paid for, and organized, and not here in Canada. Okay. Now, ask yourself the question, is that acceptable? That somebody's interfering in our bloody democracy? And the answer is no, it's not. Okay. And I'm going to fix it.
Yeah. And so that's interesting, but like, how would you then, when we talk about the notion of facts, because I think there's a lot of debate around that. And, you know, there are a lot of different perspectives or viewpoints. Like I could say what I am reading or what I'm seeing or what I'm believing, those are based on facts. And then another person with maybe a completely different opinion or perspective can say, well, these are the facts when it comes to this issue. And so, you know, how do you navigate that? Like what is factual versus this idea of misinformation? You know, we've gone down the route in society of this notion of fake news, right? You know, what we read may not be what's actually factual or out there. And I think that's a really huge sort of challenge and problem within this space.
And not just the States, okay? It's everywhere, all right? If you go back to Greece, it's there. European Union, it's there. England, Canada, New Zealand, it's everywhere, okay? Now, you really have to ask yourself, let's get down to the brass tacks of what truth is. Okay, this is a philosophical point, not a technology point.
Mhm.
Technology is kind of irrelevant to this question, okay? Remember, technology doesn't give you the answer. It just gives you the tools to get at the answer, okay? So this idea that there's different versions of truth is a symptom of a non-scientific worldview, okay, if you want to think about it from that standpoint. And let me be plain. There are things that are objectively facts,
Mm-hmm.
and there are things that aren't objectively facts, okay? And I don't think anybody disagrees that gravity's acceleration is minus 9.8 meters per second. Would you agree?
Yeah. Based on
there are
science,
people
yes.
today on the internet that will disagree, okay, with this eminently obvious proven fact, okay? That is the problem. So what's causing it? The problem is caused by the medium, okay? So if you take your philosophy or communications bits that you study, Marshall McLuhan is instructive, okay? Marshall McLuhan tells you that the medium is the message. And this is one of the most profound insights in all of history. okay, about the human condition. If you provide a medium in which people are incented to do behavior, they'll do it. Okay. The internet does not reward truth. The internet rewards blood and guts and war and crazy making and cuckoo-ness and nonsense. Okay. That's why it's increasingly nuts to watch reels, okay, or shorts or TikToks or whatever it is that you think. Watch the stuff people are doing on them between, say, 10 years ago and now, and watch how it's changed. Okay. Truth has become a point of view because the medium is the message. Okay. The greatest medium today is social media. And those 6 algorithms, largely speaking, the 6 largest social media companies, Tencent, Facebook, on and on, those companies benefit from encouraging that behavior. Okay. And when you encourage that behavior, you get more of that behavior. The greatest currency in the world is views today. Okay. It's worth more than money, if you think about it. Okay. It's worth more than Bitcoin. And if you can trade views, currency, for content, and the content is bullshit, why wouldn't you make money with this? This won't be the first time in history where charlatans have tried to make money using baloney. Okay. So I think that's the answer. And if you don't create a better medium for a particular part of your society, for instance, you shouldn't be doing science while in an environment that's, say, a campsite. You know, it's probably not clean enough to do science and chemistry. You need a clean room in a lab. In other words, everything has to have its place. And right now, we stuck the Democratic town hall onto social media platforms that are quite literally designed for bullshit. Okay, they are bullshit platforms. Okay.
Yeah. So then how do we leverage AI to sort of, like, what role does AI then play in democracy?
Well, so AI's job is to identify signals, right? Okay. My job is to build a tool that connects all the people who are going to contribute to the signals. So that's you, me, every other person who votes in Canada and in the United States and all the democracies. 4.5 billion people worldwide. Okay. That's what this company's about, Citizen. All right. This company's job is to instrument every voter on Earth with a medium capable of generating a really good signal about what people really want. And when you focus a platform on that, okay, I'll give you the example back to the printing press. Okay, so this is a really funny thing. Back in the printing press, we had the exact same problems we have today. Nobody thinks it's possible. Okay, we had the cuckoos writing all kinds of crazy shit, printing it and sending it out to the villages, and people were like, when they were reading it, like, oh my God, the king's an alien. He's stealing from babies. He's all the same stuff was happening after the sort of 15th century arrival of the Gutenberg press. Okay, now you've got to think about that for a minute. Okay, the cuckoo was there then, and they had to solve the same problem because, remember, before the printing press, you had the magistrate who showed up once a week. Hear ye, with a bell. I am the town crier. Here's the news. That was the total news. And on Sunday, you saw the bishop, who was the other dude in charge, and he was like, declamatory statements all over the place. Then the printing press came along. And the exact same situation as today happened then. Now the bishop and the magistrate have no voice because there's all these pamphlets floating around, and they're like, holy shit, there's like 10 million pamphlets floating around. That's what gave us the Protestant Revolution. It destabilized Christendom, which was one place. Okay. The Pope was the cheese. Destabilized Christendom, gone. Okay. Europe fractured, and we got 200 years of war. We don't want that from this. Right. And so what we need to do is we need to create a medium where truth can bubble up to the surface, the signals. Okay. They did the same thing back then. Do you know what they did?
No,
They
tell me.
created newspapers that were from credible sources. And so you didn't read the cuckoo shit, you read the Toronto Star, okay, or whatever it was called, the Florence Times, or whatever, back in the day. They created universities. They created education. They created the concept of the skilled professional. They created the concept of science, the scientific method. This is what we created the last time society faced this exact same problem. And we're humans, we're great, we're magnificent, we're from the West. We're going to do the same thing today, and Citizen is the tip of that spear.
Mm-hmm. And so is that really just like finding the ways to like, here are the facts, this is what we need to know, and then that's how you're able to filter out that information in a way where, from a democratic perspective, people are like, okay, this is what I'm looking at? Or
well, you're sure, okay, like if I said here's facts, this is it. But remember, when they created Parliament, okay, to solve this problem the last time, when they created the democratic infrastructure to solve the issue that they were facing, which was everybody going crazy in Europe, Oliver Cromwell came along and said, you know what? Hey, King Styles, you're using this crazy printing press business to wreck us. We're going to use it to wreck you. And then it was war. Okay. So they created democracy, and this involved people in a different way than had been involved before. Okay. And democracy, Parliament, Congress, National Assembly in France, all of these things were the result of a thinking person back then saying, how do we fix this? In the American sense, it was Oliver Cromwell. In the French sense, it was the revolutionaries. In the American sense, it was the revolutionaries. They created institutions. Institutions are the key. Okay. An institution works because it's credible. All right. The printing press works because it's censorious, okay, or sensational. The institution's job is to be the place where people look at it and go, that's good. And until 2012, academia, media, and academia, media, and government, I'm sorry. These three institutions were the infrastructure created back in the printing press days. And they lasted until the internet came along, and they worked. There's a new printing press. You need a new institution. And the new institution is called Citizen. It's the sixth estate. Okay. The first estate is the executive. Second is judicial, legislative, the three co-equal branches of government. Then you have the fourth estate, traditional local media. You have the fifth estate, which is social and internet crazy making. Well, we're creating the sixth estate. We need a new institution to be able to achieve this. And why institution? Because it means everybody in the country controls it, rather than me or some nerd or some crazy person doing it. Okay. Citizen is not a tech company in the traditional sense. Yes, it's built by nerds and crazy lunatics like me. But at the end of the day, all revolutionaries are somewhat nuts. Okay. But this institution is going to be handed over to the people so they themselves can control it. This is where it will achieve its source of truth. Okay. We will also solve economic inequality in the doing, which is the cause of all this frustration we have in the first place. Okay. All this equity nonsense that the millennials invented and all this crap. It's not a bad thing. It's just the wrong approach. Okay. All those inequalities suck. Okay. But that doesn't mean we need to throw away the system to be able to fix it. What people really want is money. So let's give them cash so they don't have an issue buying groceries or a home or going to school or getting their kid treated at a doctor or whatever it is. And Citizen's job is to produce so much money that Maslow level 1 and 2 needs are addressed everywhere on earth, even in non-democracies. And that's its promise.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess to recap, in terms of AI, it's really here to identify the signals in the noise.
Yeah.
To then really be part of change, evolution, solutions. And then how we want to leverage AI in the context of democracy is really around, giving people the ability to understand the truth of what sort of democracy is and how we operate within a society. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Okay. So I've got all of that. So maybe before we wrap up, one of our last questions we like to conclude our podcast with, and it's actually two fun ones, is given everything, you're extremely very well read. Is there a book or something that you're reading now or you've read in the last year that you really love, that you'd want to share with our listeners? And also, is there a show or something on streaming that you would also recommend to say, this is something, I would recommend that people should really watch?
Yeah. So there's actually the book. I'm going to be shameless. I'm actually an authoring co-op. I'm actually a contributing author in an upcoming book called The Network Effect. Okay. And it has a lot to do with how people get involved in society and become more productive and all the rest of it. So do watch for that in the coming months. But I don't think that's the right book for people to read. Okay. I think before this recording, we nailed the book that everybody should start reading. Okay. I think the one thing that we have forgotten in the West is that we live in the greatest and best time and place ever in human history. Okay. We all live in Canada better than King Henry VIII did 500 years ago when this exercise of democracy began. Okay. We must remember that. And we must stop trying to throw away the most incredible society that's ever been created, ever, away because some kid in their 20s is pissed off and grumpy because they don't understand our bloody history. Okay. So the book to read.
Yes.
Plato's Republic.
Plato's The Republic.
And take the journey of citizenship. Okay. Citizenship began with Plato's Republic.
Yeah.
Once you read it, you will start a journey and you will read all kinds of other books naturally. In fact, you could ask Gemini Live, if you'd like, what books to read, okay, to understand what citizenship is. And I can't reinforce this enough. Greater societies have failed. Empires have crumbled because the people in them did not understand what it meant to be a contributing citizen, okay? And so citizen self is going to be the way we manifest that. And of course, in our application, we're going to be telling people what books to read. So that's the first thing. Now, as for
Plato's The Republic. Plato's The Republic.
Plato's Republic. So that's the first one. The second thing is, if you really want to understand the impact that social media algorithms have on our life and how much they control our behavior and we don't even know it, just like the printing press of old, the cuckoo pamphleteers that put out, oh, the king's he's an alien, or he's got two heads, or he's illegitimate, or whatever they wrote. The same is happening today. Watch the Netflix show original called The Social Dilemma. Okay. And that's a couple hours that will blow your fucking mind. Pardon my French. The idea here is that until you understand what these modern pamphleteers are doing, you are going to be subject to their desires, not your own. To emancipate, to use the allegory of the cave, okay, back to the sort of similar, the similar storyline. Today, people are living in the cave again, and social media is the shadow puppets that are on the wall. Okay. And there's puppeteers in the background, shadow puppeting, and you don't know what is going on, but you're sitting there talking about what the shadows are. So I encourage people to read The Allegory of the Cave.
Great.
In particular, watch a video of lots of good YouTube about it. But traditional classical philosophy is needed if you want to be a good citizen. So read a bloody book. That's the first thing. Second, stop listening to the nonsense you see on social media. It's bullshit, all of it. Okay. And at the end of the day, you watch Social Dilemma so that you can understand just what these things are doing to you.
Right. Thank you so much. That was a very lively conversation. So that was Murray Simzer, and the CEO and founder of Citizen. And I think we have a really good explanation or sense of what AI is. So thank you for chatting with us today.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that concludes the Future of episode. Okay.